Now you may not know this by listening to the sound of my voice, but I'm a man, baby. A big muscly dude. 6'4", 250 pounds. Well, actually, 5'7", about 200. But either way, it may come as a shock that I love bunnies. Peace Offering is an interesting commander deck. It's what you may call a group hug light. I'm here to hug you, brother. Hug you abominably close to my hairy skin. So like and subscribe. Consider joining the Patreon if you want. We got a Discord out there. The fully loaded hyenas, brother. And let's start off with the new legends. We got Mrs. Bumbleflower. 1 green, white, and a blue legendary creature, rabbit citizen. It's a 1/5 with vigilance. Whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains flying until end of turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, you draw 2 cards. But remember, you can trigger this ability more than twice. So we have a couple things going on here. You got the +1/+1 counters theme, you got opponents drawing cards, and the second spell per turn, and you have lots of card draw going on. This is our build around. She is beautiful. And also just as adorable, we have Mr. Foxglove, 2 green, white, and a blue legendary creature, Fox Rogue. It's a 3/5 with lifelink. Whenever this guy attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Look at this dashing fella, beautiful man out there. This has a pretty equal chance of drawing a card or two or blasting out a fat creature. You want to give this guy some type of evasion and some type of protection so you can hit the opponent that'll advantage you the most. I like this a lot, man. Wish it had haste, but that lifelink could be a nice ability to lean into as well. Let's take a look at some of these new cards. Are there any dockside extortionists here? Any new staples? I don't think so, brother, but this one's pretty good. The Bloodroot Apothecary, 2 and a green creature. It's a squirrel druid, 3/3. Has Toxic 2. When this guy enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, that player gets 2 poison counters. This can be absolutely crippling in a treasure deck, food deck, clue deck. It's a pretty good stacks piece. Somebody's going to waste removal on this. Somebody's going to have to because they're playing treasures. Or they're going to ignore it because they aren't running these treasures and then it's just kind of a dead card. And next up we have Tempt with bunnies, dude. I love bunnies. I just can't eat the whole thing at once, 2 and a white for a sorcery, draw a card. Create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. Then each opponent may draw a card and create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. For each opponent who does, you draw a card and create that stupid little rabbit token. I like this, man. I think people are likely to take the bait on this one. Never underestimate greedy card draw of your opponents. Look at these guys. They're out there communally brewing up some beer for you. Usually when a rat sticks its fingers in my beer, I'm going to throw that beer out, but these guys are cute. They're anthropomorphic, so I'm in for it. 2 and a green for an enchantment. When this thing enters, any number of target opponents each draw a card. Put an ingredient counter on this, and then put an ingredient counter on it for each card drawn this way. So you can get a max of 4 if you're in a 4-player pot. Whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with X additional +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of ingredient counters on this stupid card, man. This can be fun, specifically in this deck, in any huggy type of deck. It allows you to do something to eventually win the game. Your creatures are going to get bigger. This Bumbleflower is going to give them flying. So that's kind of nice, dude. But, that's kind of the problem with hug decks. Like, how do you win? But don't worry, man. We're going to chat about that, too. Now, this guy is the 20-toed toad. He's 3 and a blue for a creature, Frog Wizard. It's a 3/3. Your maximum hand size is 20. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on 20-toed toad and draw a card. Whenever this guy attacks, you win the game if there are 20 or more counters on it, or you have 20 or more cards in hand. This one is one such card. This and Triskaidekaphile reward, having that big card draw out there, man. Maybe you're going to win the game with it. You got to have 20 cards. That's a big stretch, but, it's worth a shot. Now, this fella's a rather maniacal looking frog druid, the Octomancer, 3 green and a blue for a 3/3. You can gift an octopus, so you may promise an opponent a gift as you cast a spell. If you do, when it enters, they create an 8/8 blue octopus creature token. Now that sounds bad, but hang on, dude. At the beginning of each end step, create a token that's a copy of target creature token that entered the battlefield this turn. This is a pretty cool card if you make it to end step, alright? So basically, you get an octopus, your opponent gets an octopus as well. They get the puss, dude. Not bad. It's not terrible. But this comes in handy if you kind of lean into tokens, especially big tokens. I love his little stupid toad face, man. I don't know. And last one I'm going to talk about here is Perch Protection. 4 white for an instant, gift an extra turn. You know, that's not the end of the text on the card, but that's pretty bad. Create 4 2/2 bluebird creature tokens with flying. Well, hang on, if the gift was promised, all permanents you control phase out until your next turn. Your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. Exile Perch Protection. Is this good? You know, I don't really know, man. I mean, you can give the player that's way behind an extra turn, then sit there for a while. You know, you can go have a cup of coffee. I mean, that's the best thing you can probably do with this card, dude. It should say on there, go get a cup of coffee. You know, it's 6 mana, gives one of your opponents a massive advantage, but you do get to crack back first, so there is that, I guess. I think in this Precon, it's one of the more fun cards. Makes 8 flying power you can crack back with. I don't know, dude. Reprint wise, there's not a ton, man. We got Colonian Hydra. That's it, brother. You know, I guess Tameo also counts. That's a decent card, but everything from there is pretty mediocre, pretty bulky. I will say I'm happy Coveted Jewel is in there. That's a great card, lots of utility. And I was quite the Coveted Jewel myself back in the early 2000s, but that's a different channel, dude. Bloomburrow Elder is in there as well, which leads us into some sweet mana dorks that we can upgrade with. So how are we going to upgrade this thing? You know, well, we have a counters theme from our commander that's not really realized in the Precon. Let's toss in some sweet mana dorks to take advantage of that. Incubation Druid, it's got the Riz, man. This card has tons of Riz. You know, you're tapping for all that mana. Your commander puts counters on stuff. This thing's pretty fantastic. Kami of Whispered Hopes, or Kami of Whispered Hopes if you want to get European out there. You got Lae'zel, you got Hardened Scales, Branching Evolution. These give you a chance to actually build up those creature threats, give them flying with your commander, and slap in for lots of damage. Now we spoke a little about win the game cards. 20-toed Toad, Triskaidekaphile. You know, these are the types of win conditions that you need in a group hug deck, and this is a pretty fantastic deck for Approach of the Second Sun. 6 and a white for a sorcery if the spell was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game. You win the game, brother. Otherwise, put this into its owner's library, 7th from the top, you gain 7 life. So you can probably get this back really quick, dude. Speaking of which, Struggle for Project Purity. 3 and a blue for an enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, choose Brotherhood or Enclave. Brotherhood, dude. You gotta choose Brotherhood, brother. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent draws a card. You draw a card for each card drawn this way. I always choose Brotherhood if I'm given the chance with my brothers out there. Enclave, whenever a player attacks you with 1 or more creatures, that player gets twice that many rad counters. Probably choosing the Brotherhood in this case, but the Enclave can dissuade nuisance attacks, though some people want to self-mill, so you might not want to do that. And if we're leaning into that card draw, making drakes can be a win condition, alright? And with this deck, you'll be making lots of drakes with Elandra, brother. And leaning into that card draw theme, we have Ominous Seas out here, 1 and a blue enchantment. Whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on it. Remove 8 foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas, create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token, has cycling for 2. This comes down early, hopefully makes a bunch of big fat octopi and you're going to be in the money. And speaking of money, I also added in Prosperity, because it's an old card and I like it. This is a hug deck and it interacts nicely with 20-toed Toad and Triskaidekaphile. And while we're leaning into card draw here, how about Nerd Rage, brother? 2 and a blue for an enchantment aura. When it enters, draw 2 cards. Enchanted creature has you have no maximum hand size, so that's kind of important in this deck, and I did include a couple other cards that did that as well. And whenever this creature attacks, if you have 10 or more cards in hand, pretty achievable, gets +10/+10 until end of turn. Sometimes in the night, you know, I get the rage, dude. I get the Roid Rage. But then I remember how smart I am, you know, and then I get the Nerd Rage. Put that right on top of the Roid Rage, dude, and I go down and have a burrito. Speaking of no maximum hand size, you got Morshka out here, Undersea Sleuth. It's a white, green, and a blue for a legendary creature, Vidalcan Fish Detective. It's a 2/3. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Morshka. This card is kind of mediocre build around, but in this deck, you know, those clue tokens could come in really handy. Uh-oh, don't panic, but you just got caught in a storm of Saurumans out there. 4 blue for an enchantment, has ward 3. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, which you're going to be doing basically every turn, copy it, except the copy isn't legendary. You may choose new targets for the copy. That's what I'm talking about. Sauron hates the hobbits, dude. He's a mean old dude, but this card can get you lots of value later in the game. Alright, so listen, we're having fun, we're giving people cards, we're hugging people left and right, dude, but you know what, then you want to blap them right out of the game with a little infect. Phyrexian Hydra is here for it, 3 green creature, it's a Phyrexian Hydra, 7/7 with infect. Damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage, put a -1/-1 counter on it for each 1 damage prevented this way. So if somebody has some direct damage, you might be a little screwed here, but getting this guy a little bigger, giving him flying, that can be a real knockout blow, dude. Miss Bumbleflower ain't playing around with these Phyrexian Hydras, dude. Then you got Grafted Exoskeleton out there. It's another banger that beefs up a threat, poisons your opponents right to death. So with a hug deck like this, a little huggy deck, you have some ability to close out the game. You want to add a couple win conditions in there, so those are some of my ads, brother. You put whatever you want in there, man. This is a free speech zone. $25 deck list. It's going to be in the description right below. It's the deck you pull out after mercilessly beating your opponents on turn 4 with a $3,000 combo deck or something. Make Commander fun again with a little goodwill group hug. Then infect them out anyways, put the salt back in there. Nikki G, Better Commander, signing off.